So I've already made a video talking about, look, Trump has won, but he's won this, massive landslide. He owns all three sort of institutions, the presidency, the Senate, the House. I think even now, I think that's been confirmed. They have a majority there at least. Yeah, they own everything. They have full power and control. And to my American friends across the pond, I will pretty much say this: we've seen this here. We have seen this here. 2019, very similar occurrence where we had a very sort of big populist figure in Boris Johnson come forward declaring he was going to get Brexit done. And don't worry, you forgotten towns, he's going to level you up. But of course, that's not what happened. When Boris Johnson finally got his Brexit deal, even though it united the party for a second that still could not decide and still cannot decide what they want to do with Brexit, they got Brexit, quote, done, and yet they still can't decide what they actually wanted to do with Brexit. Again, reigniting a ton of different arguments in the party. This got to such a state of, by the time you get to Rishi Sunak, completely unable to do anything, even though he has this big majority, he could just not do anything with it. He could barely pass anything. So when I say to you, don't worry about Trump having all these, being in control, because there's going to be infighting. And once they start to infight, it's only going to increase, only going to get worse. And yes, they may be able to do some stuff, but the chaos and the infighting that could go on within that administration, which is very likely to happen, as we'll get to, because it's already breaking out, is going to be so bad, so bad, that if they do anything, it might not be everything they want to do, or it fails and they just spend all this time arguing and infighting about it. And effectively, a Trump 2.0 presidency almost reflects the first presidency, of where it was absolute chaos. And yes, Trump did do a lot of damage, but at least it was mitigated by competent people who were saying, actually, no, you can't do that. This time, the damage may be even mitigated just as much, maybe even more, because everyone in his administration is fighting against each other, constantly infighting, backstabbing, betraying each other. This may be the way it goes, and it is already starting. And we're going to get into some of these arguments that are already brewing, because these are going to continue throughout all this administration, and it is going to make the next Trump 2.0, as we're calling it, an absolute mess of an administration, which, don't get me wrong, from my point of view, funny to look across the pond, bear in mind, and have a laugh at everything that's going on. We will obviously have to deal with some of the consequences, as we've talked about before, like the tariffs, etc. on here. But will be fun every so often to look across and just go, what on earth? What on earth is going on here? So, even if you are, of course, sad at Harris's loss, there is at least a slight silver lining here. This infighting, I think, is going to get so bad that this completely cripples the Trump presidency. So before we do get more into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, where you can, drop me a YouTube thank you. And of course, there's the Pony Club and the Patreon page down below as well. So as always, let's crack on then into what we're talking about today. So the first thing, and I think the first guy to talk about, is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., or RFK, as he's more commonly known as. So RFK, big anti-vaxxer, big like bizarre public health advocate weirdo. And I say, public health advocate weirdo, that's not in a good way. It's in a real bad way. He wants to take fluoride out of the water. If that happens, that could cause a massive polio outbreak in America, to which you would have to then deploy vaccines, to which the guy who'd be in charge of rolling out those vaccines is incredibly anti-vaccine. I, I'm sure you can see the problem there. However, there is now a fight brewing amongst Trump's allies not to even include him in the administration. So the argument going around is now that even if you want him in your administration, he has to go before a Senate confirmation hearing where it's sort of like an interview, and he would get absolutely savaged in this process. He may not even survive it. He may not even get voted through it because of all the things he's done and said in the past. All those anti-vax comments are going to come up, etc., etc. Like, how can we trust you in the event of a potential, pandemic outbreak? All that stuff would come out. So there is very, very little chance of him actually getting into position. And then, if somehow by a miracle, he does get through that confirmation hearing and survives it, there is 0% chance of him having a security clearance for him to be put in charge of all the health administration in the US. So effectively, even if he does get that, gets the job, doesn't get the security clearance, meaning that he can't do the things that he wants to do within the administration. And yet, there is now this argument within the Trump camp of, do they take him? Do they risk going through all this? Or do they just absolutely drop him? And they're telling you now, if they drop him, he is not going to remain quiet. There is going to be a real ruckus if he gets dropped from this, because he has been telling people for a while now he is going to be involved in this Trump administration. So we'll see what happens there. But that is a fight that is currently going on behind the scenes. Another one going on concerns the Supreme Court. Because at the moment, there is the potential pick of what many people are saying is probably going to be Trump's pick for Attorney General, a guy called Mike Davis. He wants to get rid of two of the Supreme Court justices, the Republican-leaning ones, called Thomas and Alito. There's right now, they are sort of, I think, like late 70s, early 80s. I think they're roughly around about there. By the time of the end of the Trump presidency, they're going to be in their 80s. You add in potential health complications, etc., and you're just rolling the dice potentially on maybe when one of them might pop their clogs. So the Republicans are now like, look, we are in full control of the Supreme Court now, but these two represent a danger to us losing that majority. So the theory goes from this guy is you get in, you get your Trump presidency, and then you force these guys to retire. And you say, you've done your jobs, go and retire. We want to replace you with new Republican right-leaning justices who are a lot younger. You may remember Amy Coney Barrett, the last one of the big Trump appointees. She was 40, making her the youngest Supreme Court justice ever appointed. She's going to be on there for years to come, decades, because of her youth. She's going to be there. And this is the theory that is going around, that you appoint like the youngest right-leaning judges you can find, get them onto the Supreme Court, and this sort of cements your control of the Supreme Court and your majority for decades to come. Now, of course, this is actually reaching some pushback because there's a guy called Leonard Leo, and he's part of like the Federalist Society, and he is pushing back against this guy, saying, whoa, you can't do that. You can't force these guys out because it's up to them to decide when they leave, not you. So there is pushback. There is a fight going on about that at the moment as well. So how quickly that could escalate, especially if he does become Trump's attorney general pick, that fight could escalate. That fight could indeed escalate on that level as well. The final one we've got to talk about, and I think this is where not only with these guys, but there are many Trump faithfuls who have been supporting Trump for years and are expecting, and I do mean they are expecting, people like Matt Gaetz, they are expecting to be brought into the Trump presidency, to be given like plum positions within his administration. Now, will that happen? Time will tell. But already you are seeing people like Marjorie Taylor Greene going full force saying, I deserve a position. I deserve a seat at the Trump table. I have been one of your biggest supporters ever, but why on earth are you giving someone like Elon Musk a seat at the table when he only really came in to support you like a couple of months ago? He only really started supporting you just barely recently. I've been with you since day one. And they are now pushing for her to get a seat at the table. So it's not just her. There are potentially, I think, others very angry at the fact that Elon Musk is going to get such a prime palm position. So imagine the infighting that could break out between her and Elon Musk if she feels she didn't get a position because of Elon Musk. And this is once again, more infighting is going to take place between all these Trump faithfuls who are hoping that Trump rewards them for all their loyalty that they've shown him. And then they'll be backfighting, infighting, because, hey, if you didn't get chosen over someone else, they'll be infighting, they'll be briefing, they'll be backstabbing, all kinds of stuff will be going on. And this administration will just descend, I think, even into more chaos than the first Trump administration. And if that happens, how on earth is Trump then going to go and fulfill some of his agenda? Now, of course, he's going to be able to do some of it. But if there is so much chaos, so much infighting, he's not going to be able to do all of it. Time will tell. Time will tell. But it is very, very telling that the chaos and infighting is already starting now. And it is all about how much power they have, some of the stuff that they want to do. The Supreme Court's thing, I think if they go ahead with that and they do that, then the Democrats need to immediately turn around and start talking about Supreme Court reforms, putting term limits on these guys. That would be an amazing argument from the Democrats to be able to start doing stuff like that if they, of course, do it. But they're looking like they're going to be in their own, internal civil war. So that's going to be a thing for them. But as always, let me know what you think down below. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.